awful.
No, you're not.
And annoying.
You know what? You can't focus on what's going wrong. There's always a way to turn things around, to find the fun.
Yeah, find the fun. I don't know how to do that.
Okay, well, try to think of something funny.
So in advance of the sequel's release in cinema, I watched Inside Out for the first time. I haven't actually seen many Pixar films, which is odd because I know many are highly rated. Toy Story is one of my favourite film series of all time. I saw Encanto and thought it was brilliant. I shouldn't have been surprised watching Inside Out to find myself going, my god, this is great. This is a near perfect film. And I cried an absolute ton. Part of why it's so perfect is because it's built on the foundation of a near perfect metaphor. The child Riley is controlled from within her body by these 5 central emotions: joy, fear, anger, disgust, and sadness. I say near perfect metaphor because it doesn't work entirely, and it's bent at times for the sake of the story or sometimes just fun bits of humour, which is never actually a big problem. It never bends it too much. The movie makes a deeply important, touching, but also incredibly simple point. And that's the power of a great metaphor, to take a deep and complex idea and present it in a very simple, accessible way that just whacks you in the heart. That's part of what makes play therapy so effective with kids, because it is all done through so much simpler metaphor of play. And it does whack you in the heart. A girl named Riley is moving home. She's desperate to try and feel happy about it. She's pressured to as well, but no, she needs to feel sad too. And when you see the sadness all getting blocked from the very beginning of this film, and you slowly sense what Riley is going to need and what Joy needs to learn, but she keeps persisting and the grief stays penned back for longer and longer, and it just makes the moment when it finally releases so much more cathartic. Structurally, everything works beautifully here to make the ending of this film as powerful as it possibly could be over such a simple idea, which is basically Riley starting to cry and telling her parents, "I miss home." I've never been so happy to cry at a film as I was here. Sometimes joy and grief come hand in hand. Sometimes the happiest memories are tinged with sadness. Sometimes the warmest, most beautiful moments are when you can be sad and feel comfort and love and acceptance for that on a deeper level. Pain can most certainly divide us as people, I think we all know that, but it can also be an opening for compassion and connection on a more powerful level that can lead to greater happiness and fulfillment. But why don't we actually discuss the film, and why don't we talk also about something called IFS, how that relates? I think it's something I've wanted to talk about for a while. I was going to discuss it with Fight Club, but it turns out this is a much better film for it, so let's just get going. I love the beginning to this film. It's such a joyful, cosy montage of time passing, an infant's growing and developing, and just how that is used to introduce these 5 central characters who all want the same thing, which is to help Riley. They sit here at the control panel inside her brain, and they all cherish watching her grow. I find it touching just seeing them celebrate her achievements with pride. And for the most, they work as a great team, all with important jobs. Fear is there to keep Riley safe. We see it when she almost trips over an electrical wire and he jumps in to get her to halt and be careful. We need fear. It can keep us alert when we need to be alert. It can inform our judgments and the way we respond to certain situations. Similarly, we need anger, principally here shown as an expression of injustice. Riley doesn't want to eat broccoli, but it's unfair she can't get desserts until she eats broccoli. Anger explodes. You know, too often people talk about anger like a bad thing we're supposed to get rid of or let go of. No, this is another thing I talked about when discussing Fight Club. It's super important as a big external expression that can help us to stand up for what we believe in or stick up for ourselves. And there are unhealthy and healthy ways to express that anger, sure, but it's a necessary emotion. And I think to just explain that so succinctly in a kids film here by just having a character named Anger and giving him an important role, that's great. So many kids I've worked with in therapy where the first thing they needed in their growth was to allow themselves to be really angry about stuff. Disgust we see kicking in to stop Riley being poisoned by the perceived horror of broccoli, but yeah, that could be a mouldy sandwich or actual poison. Or as the film puts it, social poisoning, preventing us from falling in with things we don't like or don't agree with. I have problems with disgust as a character. I don't think she gets enough to do in this film. I think shame would have been a better emotion too. Some of the characterization I think can fall a little too much into just someone sassy, but we can see what they're going for. She still works. I just think she could have provided more. All of these four work as a great team. It's such a satisfying way to introduce them here, plus people don't just feel one thing at a time. We're a constant messy dance of so many, sometimes contradictory emotions. And that can make it really confusing to understand what the hell we actually feel about any given thing. At its best, all these feelings can come together and work like a team, but we also know they can bicker and fight, as we see happen later in this film. So I think B, seeing them working in tandem here sets that up, and C, it highlights the contrast with Sadness, who is not exactly considered part of the team. Joy doesn't understand her, doesn't think she's needed, but is also keen to be positive, so tries not to dwell on that fact.
There's no place for her to go, so she's good. We're good. It's all great.
We know Sadness has a purpose. The hint is clear. Sadness is going to be important, but we also get wrapped up in the cozy, sweet happiness of this scene that we find ourselves pulled into Joy's worldview, agreeing with her. And in all of that, I think, yeah, everything that needs to be set up for this entire story is pretty much set up. Apart from maybe what's going on in Riley's actual life. Riley is moving house to a completely different state, and there is an increasingly desperate attempt to feel happy and excited about this change. There definitely are positives. It's something of an adventure for one. And yet the more desperate that attempt, the harder and harder it gets for Riley to feel happy. Until suddenly both joy and sadness are flung away out of the control panel room. In a way, I guess you could say they get suppressed. Riley is left only with these three to feel angry and afraid and sassy, and then eventually turning more and more numb. And what happens? She acts out, unable to just feel sad and grieve the loss of her old home and old life. I say it's about moving house, but it's also to do with growing up in general. It all takes over her behaviour, and she decides to skip school and run home and just somehow hope that solves everything. I love this numb section of the film. She goes and she runs away, and then everything just goes kind of grey. Her emotions do then realise it's a bad idea. They're trying to stop her from running away now, trying to get her to get off the bus, but they can't get the control panel to do anything. It's like the levers have gotten stuck. I think that's a great metaphor. They can't muster the motivation or the energy or the care, no matter how hard they're trying. Not until Riley is able to feel what she needs to feel in this moment and receive comfort. Which, again, is where I cried a ton. Joy goes off on this long adventure with Sadness with the aim of getting back to the control panel. First wanting to get back just so she can make Riley feel joy again, but slowly learning more and more about what Sadness can do, what her skills and her role is, why she is important to the team. Without expressing the sorrow, Riley doesn't receive comfort. Joy realises that one of Riley's warmest memories, the time her teammates cheered and celebrated her, came right off the back of Riley being sad about messing up in a hockey game. All her teammates came to cheer her up about that. Her sadness and vulnerability opened up the space for this warm moment. But also, we need sadness because if we never sit with our pain, even in safe little ways, we can't really process it. You know, the harder and harder Joy tries this film to keep Riley happy, telling her to play hockey with a bit of paper, telling her to go to a pizza place or slide down a stair rail or just think on happy memories at every moment. The more she tries, the more forced it becomes until it just isn't as genuine an expression of joy anymore. The more it starts to feel forced, the less you will actually feel the joy. It'll instead start to feel like fear or anxiety, trying to hold something else at bay in place of the idea of joy. Riley then needs that sadness to make the joy feel real again. We're going to slip away into a sponsor segment right now, but then I really want to discuss IFS with you. So I got an interesting email from somebody named Leah. Hi there. We'd like to sponsor 2 videos on your YouTube channel, My Little Thought Tree. If you're interested, please let me know. I'll need to send you your mask. This is from Manta Sleep, the sleep mask company. Hi Leah. Thanks for reaching out. I can't lie, I've looked up your company just now and it does get me genuinely excited. I'm always really sensitive to light when sleeping. I've bought 4 different sleep masks in the past, 2 of them felt cheap, the other 2 worked well enough, but both had issues and both wore out over time. I had been planning to hunt for a really good sleep mask, so to suddenly have a company reach out offering sponsorship about sleep masks is either a bizarre sign or a nice coincidence. If you could let me know a little more about the company and what you're hoping for with me, that'd be great. We talked back and forth for a little bit. They let me pick a product to have posted to me so I could try it out. I just went for the Pro Mask because it's specifically designed for side sleeping. Hey Leah, hope you had a great holiday doing something nice. I've had the mask for 3 days now and I just wanted to say I love it. I didn't even realise until it arrived that you could rip off the eye cups with the Velcro and reposition them. I think that's such a great idea. It felt comfortable, I could blink and move my eyes inside the mask. It stayed in place, it blocked the lights, I fell asleep. I waffled on and we ended up talking about scrubs for some reason, but I've only ever worked with 2 different brands on this channel because I only want to take on sponsorships from companies I genuinely have passion for. If you like the sound of Manta Sleep, there's a link in the description and as a pinned comment to get you 10% off any of their products. And if not, then yeah, we're getting back to the video now. IFS, or Internal Family Systems, is a model of therapy developed by Richard Swartz, who I believe was consulted by the team behind this movie. And a lot of what we said already loosely explains it. IFS says that we all have different parts, essentially. This film conveys them as different emotions, but the thing is, there can be a lot of emotions within different parts. You know, like the part of you that drinks. Is that when you feel low or stressed, or is it to celebrate something good? Or is it a way to hang out with your friends, or is it an act of self-harm, or a load of other things that might be any or all of at once? There's a part of me that pours himself into work with an almost escapist mindset. There's a part of me that's almost like a dumb teenager again when I'm with my friends, or the part of me that's passionate about telling stories, or the part of me that's very calm and takes influence from Taoism, or whatever the hell, you know? All of these parts ideally work as a harmonious team, but under enough pressure or stress that sometimes becomes too extreme, and they sometimes come into conflict with each other. IFS divides them into exiles, managers, and firefighters. Exiles being the parts we don't want to feel or to think about. We exile them. In Inside Out, that would be sadness. Joy draws a circle around her to shut her out. She's not needed, she's not wanted. But it could be all sorts of things. The part of you that feels like a wounded child, the part that can behave badly and has done many things you regret and you don't want to think about. When they're too much and they're too uncomfortable, we exile them. And then we have these other parts, the managers who are actively taking control, largely to steer us away from pain and to steer us away from the exiled parts. That's Joy here, the manager over everything. She works herself in a frenzy to keep everyone joking, everyone thinking positive things. For me, this would be diving into my work or the fun of writing and disappearing into other worlds. I think that's one of my common managers, and it can feel positive, and that often is a good thing. I get a lot of work done. I need to, but it could also be frustrating when there's other things I need to be doing as well, or emails I don't want to respond to, and I can end up isolating myself too much. Not so much nowadays because I've got Kirsty, but definitely in the past I could be too isolated a person. Firefighters then are more explosive and urgent and looking to quickly distract you from the pain. We could loosely say that's fear and anger, and may be discussed in this film. I think drug misuse is the common example people use here. You can see immediately how this mess of different parts can work in conflict with each other and can be stretched to unhealthy extremes, and you might easily go, I don't want to take drugs, I don't want to drink or be such a people pleaser or hide away in solitude or whatever it is. I want to stop that. But you do these things for a reason, and you can't just exile or split off that part. It's still there, and the more it's this monster in the basement, the scarier and the more powerful I think it becomes. IFS says you have to understand it with compassion and go, hey, I recognise you're doing a job that is important, I can see why you're doing it. You're trying to help me cope with a pain here, but it's okay. We can ease up a little, be less extreme. And if we can understand all of these parts and all of their functions, then the more we can work in harmony again. Instead of one part running into drug use and then another part beating you up for doing that, leaving you to feel terrible and so then you feel the urge again. That's quite a simple example, but rather than that, what if this part of you that wants to be better or do better and this other part that wants you to switch off from pain? What if they could work together? Deep down, they both do want the same thing, which is to help you. This would be the self. There would be an executive leader above joy, sadness, fear, anger, and disgust who would act a bit like a compassionate parent and pull them all together. Say that kind of stuff. But that wouldn't work within the story of this film because that's the arc they have to learn. But according to IFS, we do all have this self, which is above these parts. How to work together again, rather than when Riley's feelings about moving are too intense, all of these parts start bickering and fighting with each other. I think mostly they're depending on Joy to have all the answers, which then makes her more desperate, and then things get exiled. I think we should talk about a sense of self a bit more here as well. Riley is a happy person. That's a big part of how she sees herself, it's a big part of how her parents see her in this film. And that's not exactly a bad thing, but we can see problems occur. One of the most interesting moments in this film is after Riley moves house, and they arrive, and this house looks horrible to her. To me, I'm quite jealous of the size of it, but, you know, there's a dead mouse in the room, all their belongings can't be delivered for another week for some reason, Riley has to sleep on a wooden floor in a sleeping bag, and it all feels bleak. At a time she's already sad about moving away from her friends and getting older. Joy is trying to keep her upbeat about things. Then Riley's mum comes up and tells her,
through all this confusion, you've stayed our happy girl. Your dad's under a lot of pressure. If you and I can keep smiling, it would be a big help. We can do that for him. Right?
Her mum means well, but it's clear why it doesn't feel that way to Riley. I mean, I think part of it does. I think it feels good to be seen as a happy person, as someone who is helping their parents, making their dad's life less stressful. Of course that feels good and fulfilling, but at the same time, it's a hell of a lot of pressure. It says you're supposed to be a happy person. If you're not feeling like that, you're doing something wrong. And this is where toxic positivity comes into the film. Personally, I've never liked the word toxic because I think it comes with villainous sort of connotations when it's not supposed to mean that. Joy, in a lot of ways, displays toxic positivity. So does the mum here, really, but particularly with the mum, it's not intended. There's not anything deliberately toxic or harmful here. This is a good, loving, kind mum. This is just part of a throwaway comment at a time when both parents are under a lot of stress. But the thing is, what feels like a small comment to a parent and just a minor moment in a stressful day could feel massive to the child. Riley thinks she's now supposed to be happy. It's a pressure, and it's a big part of what pushes Joy's behaviour beyond healthy into something much more extreme this film. You see, the thing about parts is we often mistake them for who we are. The first thing baby Riley's parents say to her is that she's a bundle of joy, and that's definitely a big part of her. She even has an island inside her brain called Goofball Island. She's a fun, playful, cheery kid who makes her parents laugh, and in this moment where both her parents are stressed out, Riley engages them with a bit of paper to play hockey and gets them laughing again. You know, as a kid who often played that role in my family, the playful, joking, cheery one, it's easy for that to become how you see yourself. Which again isn't necessarily a bad thing. A lot of comedians will talk about spending all their childhoods trying to make their parents laugh, and that's definitely a part of them. It's great, it led to wonderfully successful careers. But they can't be making people laugh every moment of every day. They can't see something wrong with themselves when they're not feeling up to doing that. A big part of what makes it toxic is that rigid idea, this is what I have to be. You see this kind of thing a lot in schools as well, the kind of, oh, that kid's just a nice, cheery kid, I don't need to worry about them as the teacher, they're always fine. Are they always fine? A lot of the time, probably, but are they also not daring to show anything else? Have we accidentally encouraged them not to show anything else? Riley isn't their happy girl. Or at least, she's not just that, it's a part of her. But the more we define these parts as our rigid personality, I think the more rigid they become, the more pressure we feel, and if it is something negative, the more doomed we feel to it. A part of me gets really angry when I think about the government, or when I'm watching Liverpool play. Not when I'm with other people, actually, I get too self-conscious to express it, but when I'm on my own and a game is going badly, I'm fuming. Or when I used to play Rocket League, I'd get really mad then. A part of me gets really angry, but I'm not an angry person. On the reverse, I used to think I was some zen-like calm person. I think generally I am really calm in most situations. I used to want to be that all the time. Perhaps that's partly because I was super angry as a child when my parents divorced, and I think a lot of it got blocked out of guilt, and I had to then kind of relearn it's okay to be angry at times. Playing Rocket League and getting mad at everyone else who's better than me at the game, which is most people. You know, I don't message them or trash talk them on voice chat or do anything harmful, I just shout at the TV on my own, but that's one of my safe spaces to be angry. It's a good thing. It's liberating. Part of me wants to be angry because it wants to relieve me of stress. And we see the exact same thing with Riley. A big part of her is happy, a bundle of joy, a goofball. But she's also very sad at times. She's also someone who can feel grief for her past, who can seek comfort, who can be vulnerable. All of these parts are really important. And what a lot of this comes down to is not shaming ourselves for the way we feel, but having compassion for it. You know, this is a very unusual video compared to a lot of my others because I've actually talked very little about the film itself. It's more just been a jumping off point to waffle about some different ideas, so I apologise if you are hoping for my usual in-depth analysis. Maybe I'll make a second video about this film sometime. There is more to discuss. I definitely plan on discussing the second film. I saw that earlier this week and I have a lot of thoughts on that, but generally I just wanted to express how much I love Inside Out. It reminds me how incredible animation is. You could never make this kind of film as live action. You could never express the ideas expressed here in such a simple and accessible way. It's beautiful and cozy and moving and the best kind of kids film. I know a lot of people take issue when I say this or Spirited Away or whatever else is a kids film because they want to say, well, it's suitable for adults too, it's just also understandable for kids. But I think all the best kids films are also suitable for adults because all the best kids films explore big themes that all humanity can relate to. Kids are often far more intelligent than they're given credit for. It's just if you know how to convey things to them in a way they can understand. I am in awe of how succinct this movie is. I love it, but I'm going to stop talking because it's Thursday and I want this video out by Saturday, and the more I talk, the more there's going to be to edit, so like this video if you liked it. Comment all of your thoughts, everything you've ever thought in your entire life. Subscribe, maybe support me on Patreon, or buy me a coffee, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Flying Spider, Grace, Kellyanne Davidson, Luke Hoare, Michael Gallagher, Chad Bramwell and Joshua C. Follier. Thank you.